Welcome to Multi-Voice-Oween. I am the multi-voice reviewer. I have scary voices 'cause it's Halloween. Welcome, folks. It's been a while. And of course, I know that I was supposed to be doing The Mummy on my last review a couple of Halloweens ago, but sadly, my buddy Dracula has to go back to Transylvania because there's some business he has to deal with. And Mr. Death, he's off somewhere. He has to go places. And sadly, most of my buddies, they may return soon. I don't know how long, but they will be back. And I hope some of you have enjoyed my audio drama, my scary one, the Halloween special, multi-voice reviewer scared crazy, the Halloween special. So, I figured for this review, I'm going to review one of the most interesting Halloween cartoons that I've watched since I was a little kid. I mean, I remember watching it when they always have one of those movie days in elementary school. And also, I remember watching this cartoon when I was really, really young, and I thought it was a really good movie. And it also gave me some inspiration. I mean, it kind of got me thinking more about the history of Halloween, things that are connected. And the movie that I'm going to be reviewing for you today is none other than Halloween Tree. Now, Halloween Tree was a really good cartoon movie. I mean, I remember that every Halloween they used to show it on Cartoon Network because it was created by Hanna-Barbera. You know Hanna-Barbera, the one that always made those Scooby-Doo cartoons and also the Jetsons and the Flintstones and tons of unforgettable cartoons in the past, which now that are owned by Warner Brothers. So they pretty much are connected with the Looney Tunes. And so is Tom and Jerry. But anyway, now this cartoon was actually based from a book, and it was written by the late great writer in history, and it's none other than Ray Bradbury. Now, for those of you who don't know who Ray Bradbury, he was one of the most inspirational and really great story writers in history. I mean, he wrote tons of stories, even anthology stories. I remember that back then, when Tales from the Crypt comics was pretty popular, they took two of Gene Roddenberry's stories and made a comic book adaptation, and Gene Roddenberry knew about it, so he called them and say, "Hey, what about those two stories that you swapped?" And the creator said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know how to get in touch with you." So they gave permission from him to take two of his stories and make a comic book adaptation out of it, and he was okay with it. That's pretty nice. And of course, he also made the that science fiction stories that he'd written called the Martians Chronicles. And he also wrote a lot of horror stories, action adventure, thrillers, science fiction. I mean, he was a jack of all trades. Although most of his stories are kind of anthology, but hey, they're really great ones. And don't forget that one unforgettable story that he'd written called the Illustrated Man. They are not tattoos, they're illustration skin. If any of you remember that movie, I remember I had the book of the Illustrated Man, where the guy shows up, his body is covered with tattoos, but he says they're not tattoos, they're illustrated skin. and each skin tells a story. But Gene Roddenberry, he written this book as a Halloween special, and it was made for kids, so that's why Hanna-Barbera got permission to make a cartoon out of it. And of course, Gene Roddenberry himself narrated for the cartoon. Now, what it's all about? Here we go. In the story, it was about a group of kids. They all dressed up in Halloween, and they're all going to meet their friend who goes by the name of Pip. Now, Pip was not like any other kid. I mean, he enjoyed Halloween, and they always enjoyed a good fun and scare from him. But all of a sudden, they showed up to his house and they discovered that he was sent to the hospital. And the reason why he was sent to the hospital is because he had appendicitis, which they always say it's pretty dangerous. On appendicitis, you could die if you didn't have it removed. So pretty much his friends, Tom the Skeleton, Jenny the Witch, Ralph the Mummy, and Wally the Monster, they decided to celebrate Halloween without him. So they went to this spooky looking, haunted looking house, which not many people know that it was owned by a really strange man. He was tall, skinny, bald, with a long nose and a long chin, and he has this long cape, and he goes by the name of Mr. Moundshroud, voiced by the late great Spock himself, Leonard Nimoy. And I can do a good impression. The name's Moundshroud. Mr. Moundshroud. Now, I call him Mr. Moundshroud because I cannot pronounce his full name, so I just call him Mr. Moundshroud. Now, he's a mystery because you don't even know if he's a sorcerer or a warlock or the Grim Reaper. Because what he has a tree that he calls the Halloween tree full of pumpkins. And then they come across this one pumpkin which was carved to look a lot like Pip. And then from out of nowhere, they saw Pip showing up looking all ghost-like. He climbs up the tree and grabs the pumpkin that looks like him and took off. And Moundshroud was like, "Get back here, boy, with that pumpkin. You and I have an appointment." But since he took off, he tell the kids to gather all the posters of the circus that he had on his barn, which they are all just pictures of animals like lions, elephants, and other circus animals. And then they all put it all together and formed a giant kite. Now, Mr. Moundshroud, he asked them, "Why are you dressed up as these monsters?" I mean, he tells Tom why is he dressed up as a skeleton, tells Jenny why she dressed up as a witch, why Ralph is dressing up as a mummy, and why is Wally dressing up as a monster. And discover that they don't know why because they don't know the origin of the monsters they dressed up as. So he decided to well, on the cartoon, the Magic School Bus. Well, now it's a magic kite. Hop on the magic kite! And they time traveled. They time traveled and went to other countries. First, they landed on ancient Egypt, where there's a lot of mummies around. And on a certain day, all the family have mummy relatives, and they always have them out of their sarcophagus. so they can join with them when they're having dinner. And of course, some people do leave food outside of their house, so the spirits of those who are mummies can try the food so they can eat them. So pretty much most of the origin of the mummy is pretty much part of ancient history and also part of Halloween. Gee, and I always heard about how they mummified people. They just remove their guts, put them in jars, use a long hook to stick it up your nose, scramble the brains, pull them out, put them in jars for safekeeping. That's how they mummify. And always sprinkle it with salt and oil so they can preserve the body. And then they found Pip in the sarcophagus. So they tried to get Pip out, and he was finally out, and Pip just took off again. So now they went to medieval England in Stonehenge. Hello, Stonehenge! Whoever takes Pandora takes the universe! Sorry, I always wanted to do that line from Doctor Who. But one thing you should know, that they ended up in the area where witches did exist. And Jenny asked them, what are these witches, what do they do? And he says, absolutely nothing. The reason why they were called witches is because they are elderly women who are very, very smart and very intelligent. So pretty much, witches are more like scientists in medieval time. I mean, they have a cauldron mixing something. I mean, it's more like chemistry they're doing and cooking when they're making food. And I guess it's medieval science that a lot of people thought it's witchcraft before people got smarter and not knowing that they can save lives. And then a bunch of witch hunters started burning all the witches out, and they found a bunch of brooms. Jenny grabs onto a broom and she starts flying, and all the other kids grabbed their brooms and they took off, and they found Pip, so they followed him. And then they went to Paris, France, and they found a giant chapel, which it turns out it was Notre Dame. Wake me if you spot a hunchback. But of course, there was one thing wrong with Notre Dame. Wally discovered that there is no gargoyles, and the reason why most giant chapels, I mean, yeah, most chapels have gargoyles on their churches is because they're supposed to keep evil spirits away. That's what the gargoyles are for, and they were the inspiration for the monsters. And then all of a sudden they found Pip, who was turned into a gargoyle, and they were trying to remove the pumpkin out of his hand. But Pip says, "Don't remove the pumpkin, I'll be gone for good." And then Pip just hopped onto the gargoyle, get his pumpkin back, and took off. So all the kids hopped onto their gargoyles, and they flew away, all the way to Mexico. Si, senor. And of course, in Mexico, they are celebrating Dia de los Muertos, which means Day of the Dead. So pretty much they see a bunch of people celebrating the Day of the Dead, celebrating their dead relatives. That's what they do in this celebration. That's what they do when they celebrate. They celebrate their loved ones, their deceased loved ones. And of course, they were giving away these sugar skulls. Of course, that was one thing I would like to try. I'd like to try a sugar skull. I mean, they're made of sugar, shaped like skulls, and I hear they decorate them in different colors with icings and such. And even they tried it them. I mean, they got sugar skulls with their names on them, which was pretty neat. And even they also ate it because it's sugar. So, until they found a cathedral full of skeletons decorating everywhere. A Mexican cathedral full of skeletons. And Pip was in the cathedral. And that's when they finally discovered that that pumpkin is actually Pip's soul. And if Mound Shroud kept the pumpkin, Pip would be gone for good because of the appendicitis. So, Tom did the bravest thing in the world. And of course, all the other kids, they all shared great memories with Pip. So Tom decided to give his life for Pip's life. And all the other kids did the same. So Mound Shroud found a sugar skull with Pip's name on it and broke it into 4 pieces and gave it to them. And then they all ate it. And then after that, whoosh, they went back home. And it was still Halloween. So they all ran all the way to Pip's house. And they found Pip alive and well. So, pretty much, they all live happily ever after. And also, Mound Shroud, he stared at his Halloween tree with all the jack-o'-lanterns everywhere in the tree, and then all of a sudden it also showed Mound Shroud's pumpkin. There was a pumpkin that looks a lot like Mound Shroud. And since Halloween was over, Mound Shroud created a huge wind, and he just disappeared along with all the pumpkins from the trees. But he says that he will come back for next Halloween. Now, that was a really good movie I ever seen. And having Ray Bradbury, the author, narrating throughout the entire movie was a gem. And now I'm hearing that there is a rumor that they're going to plan to make a movie, a live-action movie of it. Now, I don't know about movies of today because a lot of people have been making a lot of remakes, which they don't go well. And some of the movies are getting more political, which is getting ridiculous. And I also heard about Disney making movies based on anime, and they don't turn out as good as they hoped. So, I don't know if this live-action version of the Halloween tree they're going to make is going to be a good one or not, but I bet it might turn out as good, but I don't know. But that is my review for the day, and for those of you who love my review of the Halloween tree, please leave a comment down below, hit like and subscribe for more reviews. Now, what's on my agenda for today? Now that is more challenge. My next review is going to be Something Wicked This Way Come. Now, this one is definitely one of Ray Bradbury's. Something Wicked This Way Come was based on Ray Bradbury's book. So I'm pretty much on a Ray Bradbury roll. And the movie is Disney, and it's also rated PG, made in the 80s. And you know how PG rated movies were back in the 80s. Not like the ones of today, where pretty much stands for practically G. Well, so stay tuned for Something Wicked This Way Come, and I'm the Multi-Voice Reviewer. I remember it so I can jog your memory. Happy Halloween!